Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dreamdata.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dreamdata employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations,
social selling maybe. Hello and welcome everybody to another Attributed session. Again, it's brought to you by us, Dreamdata. My name is Stefan, and today I have with me a good friend, a good friend who also happens to be, in my opinion, a good B2B marketer. And Philip, a month or so back, wrote a little summary of what he's learned as three years as a CMO at a company called Scheme. Found that to be probably a great opportunity to catch up, Philip. Time has just fine since we've seen each other. But I think before we to your post, let's just kind of to hear a little bit for those who don't know you, like who you are, also what it is that Ischemi does, and just to complete the pitch, also who's typically the buyer of your product.
Yeah, perfect. So doing it in 1 minute, as I've practiced a million times before, right? So, Philip, I've been in the Adtech world for the last 3 years, and overall in marketing as a marketing leader for the last probably 15. I'm getting up there, primarily within B2B SaaS, and now working within in Adtech, which is a little bit different. And Ischemi is a global company, so we're about 40 markets with people on the ground. We're 215 people, and we're bootstrap, have been around for about 9 years. And we service primarily big media brands. I represent Coca-Cola's of the world and Diageo's and BMW. And we're a creative and media tech platform, which means we help distribute all of their ads primarily on the open web across display, also CTV, DOH, and audio channels. So we're what's commonly known as a DSP, but we add a different angle with our creative solutions as well. And again, some of the reason why I wrote the post was that we have 40 markets, and being here for 3 years, you see a lot of fun stuff. I travel a lot and visit many of our markets, but there's a lot of subtle nuances that aren't so subtle once you scale. So I thought that was quite fun to write a little bit about some of the things that I've experienced.
That's really great. And maybe just to refresh both my memory, but also people listening, a DSP. What is it like? How is that being used by marketing teams?
Yeah, so a DSP stands for demand side platform, and it's a way for people to buy a lot of inventory at scale through a lot of different ad exchanges. So the technical structure of this ad tech world is quite complex, right? But we all know there's publishers like the New York Times. When you see an ad there, it's usually either bought directly or it's bought via one of the DSPs, or it's also bought via Google. Google is our main competitor with DV360. They also have their own DSP. So it's always nice to be a small scale up competing against Google on the global scale. So there's a lot of maneuvering around with positioning and extra offering, and of course some of the services we do. But yes, it's a media buying tool for larger brands. It's not usually something a mom and pop shop would do, because usually the budgets are a lot larger, and the complexity of the setup is also like that.
Very interesting. So why would I go to Ischemi, a DSP, as opposed to just plugging into like the Google Display Network?
So Google Display Network and Ischemi and also DV360, which is also Google's, is a little bit different in terms of how the media buying is done. So the scale is completely different. And I would say most people working on DV360 is not the brands themselves. They're actually outsourcing that work to big 8 media agencies like Dentsu, Publicis, around the world. So those are our primary customers. We do work with some big brands like Diageo directly, but it's primarily done on that scale. And it's to get access to the open web, right? I think we all work here. That's part of this call is primarily LinkedIn, Facebook, Meta, TikTok, all of those places. But the open web is actually over 60% of the daily traffic or where people spend their time. So I wouldn't say it's an untapped source because it's been around forever. It was there first, right? But it's still one of those places where a lot of brands, if they want a lot of visibility and reach, need to dig in, right? Because it's not everyone you can reach on TikTok. It's not everyone you can reach on Facebook. So a lot of these brands are using this, and the complexity is getting more and more there. So it's a very interesting space to learn. I'm still learning after 3 years what some of these acronyms means, but there's hundreds of them, and it's really exciting. And So getting back to the question, working with us is a little bit more, we do a lot more managed.
Yeah.
So we have a lot more creativity. We have our own creative studio, which is about 12 people just sitting and helping creating more engaging ads, custom rich media, stuff like that. And then we work with a lot of third-party vendors also for tracking. Unfortunately, not Dreamdata for tracking, but for some example is Lumen, which is an attention tracking tool. So we use that. Again, brands are very keen to see, is my ad not only visible, but is it actually also seen, right? So we're also measuring a lot more deeper down the funnel, also in terms of brand lift studies, in terms of what moves the needle, which types of ad creatives, formats, and channels. So it's a lot more complex, and that's why a lot of it is outsourced. There's a lot of speciality required. So we have an ad ops team that works on setting up all these campaigns. Most of our campaigns are run from us, so it's managed, but we also have self-service. So that is an option. But the complexity and just using people on the ground, we have again 40 people around the world just sitting and optimizing and working on local relevance. I think it was our CCO who says, like, it's amazing to sit in London creating a media plan, but that in London, right? But that doesn't work on scale if you want to target it in Lagos, right? There's a lot of cultural nuances and understanding of both publishers, relationships, wordings. Brand safety is a big keyword still for many of these brands. They don't want to be associated with these things. So it's a very interesting space. And I think that's also why I wrote the post that the global complexity is even harder than we do it, right? Because most strategies are either made in New York or London. So it's a different side than working on that.
That's so much cool information there, Philip. Thank you. I guess that's probably a good plug to kind of the first part of your post. I'll just pull it up here for those that are watching, so they can see it as well. The overlay here, which I was sitting and thinking as you were speaking, like number one here is like local insights are worth more than the global benchmarks, which I guess is also what you're saying about if you're a company in London that has a service or a product that is relevant in Lagos in Nigeria.
Yeah.
You don't really get the sense of humor down there. You don't know what's the hot topics, etc. So I guess
I like that the global benchmarks, they give you averages, but local insights, they give you the answers, right? I think that's a good way to frame it, because that's the way we all do business, right? Even us that work with, or you who work with Meta, right? You're generally going to be using the benchmarks that the US partners have done, or the US sites that publish these numbers, right? So there's a lot of nuances. There's also a lot of common ground in many things, right? I mentioned Lumen attention tracking, like that's a global thing in terms of how we view things. Eyeballs. If you're from China or if you're from the US, we still perceive the same way, but all the small nuances is lost, right?
I can even sense it just for myself once we kind of at Dreamdata opened an office here in New York where I am today, as opposed to when we were running out of Copenhagen. Like it's just kind of like you use different words. There's like a different way of kind of interacting when you're in meetings in the US as opposed to Denmark. So I definitely can see the advantages there of the local insights.
Yeah, and it's not only external, right? It's also internal. So we're both from Denmark, and we have, well, at least I have a bad sense of humor, and Danes do in general. So it's also understanding how that is perceived internally, right? I had to tone down a lot. I'm still being seen sometimes a little bit too funny, as I would say, right? But it's also the internal communication is very different, right? If you're sitting with internally, but also externally, right? So cultural things when you sit down for meetings in Bangladesh, in Lagos, or places like that, right? So I think it's a very fun challenge. I think many people underestimate the importance of understanding cultural nuances, both when it comes to marketing, but also when it comes to actually working with your teammates across not only time zones but continents.
Do you also then you carry out research on behalf of or do you like do customer interviews of a product in a certain country before you then do the creatives or something like that?
We work on a brief level, so we do proactive and reactive. And yeah, again, some of the benchmarks is very local, right? So let's say that a benchmark in Nigeria is not the same as a benchmark in Copenhagen, right? So we have to take part of that. The price is also vastly different. You can get CPMs of down to 0.01 in Nigeria if you do it properly, but in Denmark, if you go on the biggest publishers, it's $10 CPM, right? So it's very different, both the pricing, but also the output and the average expectations from the brand, right? But we always work on performance-based. We're still a top of the funnel play, but we always work with performance elements, either if it's CTR, if it's engagement with the banners, or if it's viewability of the ads, right? So it's still a performance play, and we already always, when we set these insertion orders or briefs, we have clear directives of what we're trying to achieve. So our platform takes care of most of it, but we also have people sitting and manually optimizing, removing, blacklisting, whitelisting these things. So it's a complex setup, which again, programmatic is very automated. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
But coming down to the performance element and the small subtle nuances, machines can't do everything yet. I think there are still some good players out there who's doing a lot of great stuff. Like algorithms and AI is definitely part of our agenda as well. But it is still a very performance driven way of doing it, and automation is also part of it.
Yeah, speaking of performance, so you're in here as bullet number 3, you put visibility refuses to die as a KPI.
Yes.
Which I would love to hear what's up with that.
Oh, this is something that us marketers, that are a little bit older, might be a little bit more aware of, and also if you worked with direct media buying on some of the bigger publishers, is that we see dashboards, we have reports, we know that our numbers by heart, but there are in some markets where if they don't see the ad, it doesn't work, or it wasn't there, even though we have our own systems, our third-party data validations, others have seen it. But let's say a managing director from an agency hasn't seen the ad, there might be some distrust of this is actually working. So it's a little bit of a pet peeve. I think it's getting better, but we just still get a lot of requests saying, hey, why haven't we seen the ad? So some of our team members are sitting and searching for the ads on big publishers and taking screenshots of it and sending it. So
that's
I'm not sure it's a trust issue. I think it's more of a cultural issue.
Yeah, it's okay. I thought it was actually I thought it was some kind of spreadsheet metric where you said like, this is the audience penetration, but it's actually the physical ability to see the ads somewhere.
Yeah. So it's a fun little thing that I picked up. And first I was like, do you mean viewability? It's percentage? No, visibility is the keyword. And we're making a little fun of it, but it is for some, right? And it's not fun for them, right? Imagine that the brand is after you because they haven't seen the ad as an agency, right? That's not fun, right? So we have to mitigate it and figure out something, but it's still something we're trying to educate that this is actually not the part, right? We have third-party validation. You can see all the clicks, the engagement rate in the dashboards and the results, right? So it's just one of those fun little quirky things that's a little bit different.
First order of business when you have a new client is just install a big billboard outside their office and then move on to the
yeah. I was actually thinking about doing a vibe coding session in the weekend just to build a tool that searches for their ad and takes a screenshot, but I might leave that to the professionals.
Let me pull up your list again. I think there's obviously some WhatsApp moving deals, but I think that is probably more for the sales people out there. The biggest competitor is often apathy and not another tool. What's in that one?
So for us, it's not an arrival platform. It's usually the client deciding not to do anything, or we'll revise that next quarter, right? So let's wait and see. So if you go into the attribution, right, these are invisible losses we wouldn't be able to do, right? So you have to do a lot of qualitative and quantitative research on that. But the clients, we all know that we work. Hopefully, all of us have a very good relationship with our sales counterpart, right? And it's one of those things that it's hard for us to do, saying why did we lose a deal? But sometimes things just fall through the crack, right? It's the apathy of both the brands or the campaigns not falling through. So it's part of right.
What are you trying to do from a marketing point of view to avoid this kind of no decision outcome? Is there anything you can do, you think?
There probably is. I'm not smart enough to think of anything on the fly, but what we're trying to do is general client education, right? I think making sure that we're aligned, because we still do deal like we have a CRM, we put in deals, we have recent lost one, and we try, of course, to do a lot of prediction on that. But it is just about client education, making sure we don't start up any conversations with non-ICPs. That's been a big push for us this year, is to really move towards big ICPs, larger clients, going into bigger markets where the reliance is there. So we are in some specific markets where riots is a big part of why didn't we hit our quarter goals, just because there was a riot or the internet was out for 2 weeks. It's some of those exotic things that makes it fun, but it's also unreliable. So what we're trying to do a little bit more is move to more regions that are a little bit more safe. So Baltics, Southern Europe, we're doing a lot more, because we do have mainly focusing on Africa, Southeast Asia and East Europe, right? So moving a little bit more towards sustainability and stability is a strategy
Yeah,
and our hope, right?
super nice. I think that the your number 6 here is really interesting in these AI times where like you have generative AI flushing all the feeds, all the ad opportunities out there with content. And just I can just read it out loud, Philip, and you can take it from there. But creative isn't an afterthought; it's the actual distribution strategy.
Yeah, I think that's not only for us, right? So we work on the open web where there's not really any amplification of content, right? So I think this goes both ways, mostly also towards both ways, but in a different way, right? So when you look at the wall gardens like Facebook, right? The creative is the distribution as well, right? The amplification, if you do something good, the algorithm will reward you. On the open website, it's not the same way, right? The results will help, right? But it still needs to be built into how you actually look into it, right? So it needs to be that it's unskippable for us, right? So we want to create content that people stop and think about, sit down, and we do a lot of gamification and rich media where interaction, right? So this is where most of the fun happens, right? So imagine instead of just browsing through a boring, I'm going to just put Coca-Cola on the spot because Coca-Cola is doing amazing here, but Coca-Cola, just buy Coca-Cola, right? Scroll past it. That's not fun. But what if Coca-Cola had a game? You're visiting New York Times on the left side. Can you beat our score, right? And you sit and play a game, right? So you're interacting with the brand for maybe up to 20 seconds instead of just scrolling past it, maybe even barely noticing, right? So there's a direct correlation with time on brand and the attention, and from there on off, brand lift studies and intent purchase. So time on asset is one of those things when it comes to creatives, and it goes same thing for video. It goes the same thing also for, of course, Facebook and all these other platforms, right?
It's funny how this kind of, or is it maybe it's just my own personal journey, but it's kind of return of the creative part of marketing again, where I miss the old days where you could just solve everything in a in a spreadsheet, place the ad, calculate the CPC price, then sit back and enjoy the profits.
Yeah, but I think also it offers the new tools, let's say for Meta, right? There's a lot of great AI optimizations, but I think it's getting very calculated and cold. It's still missing out on the old, like let's say Ogilvy days, right? The father of advertising, right? The good old days of where copywriting and creative went hand in hand, right? I'm a big fan of those times, and I think it's still missing out. I think some brands are trying to do that. I think we're also working on some things on the contextual AI side with merging brand identity with where people are actually listening. So there's some fun things happening in that space as well. But it all goes together, right? So it's coherent plan with your targeting, your audience, your creative, and your goals, right? So
Let's
it's
see
it.
you hook this together with your number 11 here, which is in low trust markets, creative is your credibility.
Yes, because one of the things that we also see is we compete against not only Google, but we also compete against smaller players in local markets. And we usually get, when we have a new format or a new creative, we get copied instantly, right? And that's because they see the value of it. And one of the things that we just see is that they can't imitate it as well. So when a brand launches with this, we can just see the results are not there. It's lower trust and just having something that sticks out, right? I think it's sort of like looking at my daughter's drawing of an elephant versus something that Monet would be able to do, right? It just builds trust that the something that you deliver is thought out. Yeah, it's pretty also, but it also has the functionality, right? So we work with Neurons, which is an amazing Danish brand. So what we also do is we validate not only that our creatives look amazing, that they also work, that they resonate on the cognitive level, and it has the desired outcome. So working data-driven and creatively is also a fun cross-function of what we do. I think that's also part of getting the trust out and seeing how data can validate some creativity, which is a whole new sense of neuroscience, which is evolving very fast, especially now with AI.
That actually sounds pretty like comforting that that if you actually as a marketer do really good work, both aesthetics but also contextually, copywriting, etc., it actually do stand out and it do keep the competition at the door because they can't do it as well as you can.
Yeah, and then that's a competitive advantage, but it sets the bar very high, and that's of course costly as well. We have a lot of people doing many things that AI at some point will help us with, right? But I think from that end, that's also how we win against Google in many markets, and also lose against Google in many markets. So the conundrum is that we can sometimes encounter that Google is mandated by a brand, so they can't work with us even if they want to, because it's mandated globally that they have to use Google, because Google is the de facto, right? We all know Google, right? So we have to do some leaps and bounds on that ends, but it is fun. I love when we win against Google. I love Google. They're amazing, but everyone in this world is sort of like competitors and friends. We buy from Google, they buy from us. It's sort of a frenemies game in Adtech, which is very interesting, because you still have to be very friendly, and it's amazing what people are doing. So good to see that if we can all win together, that would be good.
Yeah, I think like at this point in time where we are at, I'd be love to hear just kind of is like the small glimpse you've had of like AI's impact on this like creative process.
Yeah.
Whereas like there's these people that are totally dystopian. You're not gonna need designers. You're not gonna need copywriters. AI is just doing everything. But you're saying that at least for the time being, that's probably not the complete right way to execute right now.
I think it's about always staying tuned. So we have a couple of teams. We have a full creative team, which has engineers and backend and front end and designers and creative strategists. So what the creative strategist does is of course using everything they know about the brand, using that. Now we're just launching new contextual AI products as well to help us with brand blueprints, we call it. So we're actually going in very much deeper on each brand, understanding everything about their strategy, their clients, where they want to be shown, and then we could tailor it towards their strategy. So we also do very high-end strategy sessions with the big brands in terms of how they want to be perceived, what's their Q4 plan, the Q5 plan, and Q1 plan, and that's interesting. I think creative. I was just playing around with some new tools that arrived yesterday from Google, and it is amazing. I think it will change the way we do it, and we are using it to some extent, especially with resizing. We do a lot of, like, let's say we have 30 or 40 different sizes in a creative, right? It helps immensely here. So we can take that time from 2 hours to down to 20 minutes. So it helps with the creative thing. I think that's where I'm still a little bit old school Ogilvy. I think AI can do a lot. I think it can do copywriting better than me already, but it still needs a good prompt, right? So I think the prompt engineering is not underrated. I still think that's going to be something that we should all be better at. I think that should be, instead of having math in school, I would like my son to have prompting. That would be amazing. So I think that would set him up for future success even more. Right?
That's nice. Okay, last one of your observations that I want to drill into before we have to stop. Number 10, media buying is easy. Market education is the real work. I would love to hear what's behind this statement.
Yeah, I think it's mainly because we work in a lot of growth markets, which aren't necessarily accustomed to some of these major tools. So our old strategy was simply to be number 2 in those markets, so we can help build it. Now we've tried also to be number 1 in many and launch new things, but market education is real work. A lot of our clients.
So education on behalf of the scheming.
Yes,
Okay.
and overall industry education of why they should do it. Again, if you can buy a CPM for 50 cents on Google or on Facebook and buy it costs 60 cents for us, we need to explain the differences between both the creative and also the platforms and also the world. Not to say that we're more expensive, but it's just an example. And overall, all the tools, it's a very, very complex world. As I said, I'm still learning and I'm not that dumb. But there's lots of technology behind it. So we actually also offer certifications. We have a certification program for programmatic, which is really amazing. A lot of our hope no competitors are listening, but it's doing really amazing in converting that into trust and also to actions and deals, because we're educating them why the importance. And of course, there's a twist with why you should use us at the same time. But education is tough when it comes to, like, I wouldn't say we're a front runner, right? But we're using high grade technology in markets that have been used to buying things on outdoor. So in some of our markets, outdoor is still the biggest spender, right? So seeing a sign down the street, that's still where a lot of the majority goes, right? So going from that, from print to digital, that's a fun journey. And I think we all had that. Every market had that, but I think some of our markets might be a little bit lower behind here. And I think it's one of those things we just have to think about.
What do you feel is like, you don't have to disclose it if you don't want, but like the single most educational piece that you can do towards your potential prospects? Is it like steak dinners, or is it like PDF downloads, or what works?
So it's in between. So we go to agencies and sit down and speak and do workshops together. So we do creative workshops, which is it's our entrance to the door, right? Because everybody needs more innovation and it helps them also stick out, right? So if we come to say Dentsu Indonesia and say, hey, this is something we've done for Coca-Cola, they can come and show this to Coca-Cola in Indonesia, and it can open up conversations about why they should use us. So workshops, both technical, but also on, let's say we talked about Lumen attention tracking. So we have experts in-house and we can come and speak with these things. But yeah, definitely events is a bigger part. We have maybe maximum 40 ICPs per market. It's very small because we're not necessarily always going after direct brands. We're going after the big agencies. So we don't have ABM is still part of it, right? But we don't have a big, large-scale display accounts or ads for us, right? It is people. It's a people business. It's sitting down. It's coming. Dinners is a small part, but yeah, it should be more. So events next year, the budget is going to be much larger. So yeah, from my mouth to our CEO's ears, right? I think it's very important that we are there being seen, and brand is something that we're all under investing in, and I'm cutting everyone throwing everyone under the bus who's sitting on this call, but I would definitely say working with some of these big brands, a lot more of our budgets should be going towards branding exercises and events. So good for the attribution as well. You can still attribute that to Stefan. So you just need to add to Dreamdata as well.
All good.
Some brand lists.
We're basically out of time. It's been a quick episode today, but before we finish up, please repeat who should reach out to Ischemi, like who's typically the best fits for you guys, so people listening can consider whether that's a way.
Yeah, primarily CMOs and media buyers for larger brands would be from that side, and otherwise it is media companies, so managing directors, chief investment officers. But we're open for business. Again, that's you don't discriminate, and feel free to reach out to me if you need anything. Also happy to just catch up, and if you have any questions afterwards, just feel free to find me on LinkedIn.
Amazing, Philip. Thank you to everybody. Thank you, Philip, for sharing your knowledge, and everybody have a great day.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.